Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to At the Inn of Film and Ink. This morning, we are going to be discussing what happens when you take a good book and turn it into films and TV shows to varying degrees of results. With me, as always, I have Mike Michelson and Sebastian.
Sebastianson.
They call the boys.
We were making fun of people with like a first name for two names, like John Johnson or Steven Stevenson or Mike Michelson.
Yeah.
If that's
Yeah,
even
for
a
those-
name,
for
Michelson,
those-
I don't know.
For those
Probably.
parents out there, this came from a quick discussion we had about the show The Fixies and Tom Thomas.
Yes.
I don't know why parents would be that mean.
Yeah,
But,
well, that's
you
the
know what?
thing, right? You think it's like, well, when you're having a kid, you're discussing names, and it's like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we named the kid like, Tom Thomas? And it's just like, yeah, that's funny at the time, and then they actually do it, and you're like, you're assholes for doing that.
Oh, what's the old Saturday Night live skit? I think it was Nicolas Cage when they're discussing names, and he's just pulling all sorts of. This is how the kids make fun of him, and his last name is Aswipe, Mr. Asswipe.
Yep,
Asweepe.
Asweepe. That's
Oh my
amazing.
god.
It's and there you very rare. I brought up Nick Cage, so
I know. Well, Matt, he is your favorite actor. We've gone over this, ad nauseum over the last year and a half of us doing this together. And, you every week it's like Nick Cage is the greatest actor on the planet.
100% agreed.
The man's won an Oscar. What more?
Yeah, come on. He
was in a movie with animatronic puppets.
Movie.
Yeah. Have you guys seen, well, Matt, you haven't, but Seb, have you seen the Nick Cage movie where he plays himself and like Pedro Pascal's in it?
No, I heard it's amazing though.
I know.
I heard
caught
it's
him
actually
10
really
minutes of
good.
it, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then I had to change the channel because some other children were coming in the room and stuff. So I was like, whatever.
I think I saw about an hour and a bit of it. And I fell asleep on the couch.
That's
people that get control of the remote control in my life once in a while, and yeah, that's a whole thing. And there's one of them.
Matt has seen it. There it is.
We watched
the name of it.
I definitely fell asleep.
So, like in our house, a lot of times in the evening. I know this is totally off topic, but whatever. Because kids nowadays don't really. Music videos aren't a thing, right?
No.
Not like when we were young, like especially like late 80s, early 90s, all that, it was exciting to turn on much music and whatever your favorite band was on every 20 minutes. And it's like, man, like Smells Like Teen Spirit or Enter Sandman or whatever was playing. So we watch.
Mostly it was Alanis Morissette.
Wow.
Nice.
And then later on, it turned into Shakira and Christina Aguilera and whatnot. But anyway, different reasons, of course. But Cooper really likes. We flip between the retro pop channel, the metal channel, and the country channel. And last night it was about 2.5 hours of straight music videos. And so they had Hair Metal Madness on the Loud channel last night, and watching, like, they had Rat and Saxon, and there was some really bad Poison, Bon Jovi, blah, all the staples, right? And even early and Guns N' Roses, the It's So Easy video, dude, that hair Axel had, it was like it was.
Oh yeah.
It was teased up, super big.
The same hair he had, and probably from Welcome to the Jungle too.
Yes,
where he had that big.
Exactly. It was just like a
hair-sprayed fro thing going on.
And he asked him the question. He's like, especially the metal videos. Are all these videos in the 80s like them playing live? Yeah, that's about kind of how it goes. Whether they're rehearsing or they're actually in front of a crowd over the track or whatever. And it's so much fun to watch him. Like sort of experience, and The Memory Remains came on. He's never seen that video, and so we were watching that. That was a good video, and one thing I took out of that video was, I don't know if it was on purpose, but Metallica is obviously my favorite band, but they look like a bunch of assholes in that video. Like they just look like these pretentious, super rich.
That's their GQ aura.
Exactly.
There's a reason for that.
And that's what I told the kid. I'm like, well, at this time they were the biggest band on the planet. They were the richest band on the planet, and they could do whatever they want, and excess was normal.
I mean, that's I don't want to go down a Metallica rabbit hole here.
No, I don't either.
You get to a certain point that you just get to do what you want, and if it doesn't work, you're fucking bulletproof.
Yep.
I mean, let's look at all the big swings though that band is, or any band is really taken once they get to that level.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, we're gonna forgive you for this. U2 survived the backlash of them doing something nice for the world, which a lot of people didn't appreciate, and I don't understand why. Metallica survived a few things.
Yeah.
Speaking of videos,
The U2 thing is a good conversation for down the road because that is a
yeah,
really
it definitely. I want to get into.
Yeah.
I think we need to. We're doing a lot of film stuff. We're gonna have to switch it up and do some music. So maybe we'll
Yes.
start talking about a couple of
Yes.
bands and their careers. I'd love to discuss U2.
Absolutely.
It's one of my bucket list bands. But I was
So good.
listening to a podcast yesterday, and you were speaking about videos don't get made anymore. There's a very famous rock and roll star that is planning to do videos for his new album that's being released, 10,000 Volts, and it sounded, as the way he was discussing it, like it's going to be a purely 80s shit fest of
Really?
girls in black leather skirts and all this
Uh-oh.
thing. Ace Frehley,
Oh, really? love Ace
who's you ever see somebody and you hadn't really heard them speak before, and then what comes out of their face is something so bizarre that you cannot comprehend it. I
Yeah.
mean, Mike Tyson being the obvious one. There's also
David
a wrestler
Beckham.
from AEW, The Butcher, who is a big beefy dude. He plays guitar in, I can't remember the name of the band, but he's like a punk metal guitarist. Just massive dude, looks like a walrus, and his voice comes out all squeaky like Tyson's too.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
this is what Ace Frehley was, except he sounded like Nick Kroll doing his obnoxious kid voice, and I couldn't get past it. And I had to listen to it for an hour. Thankfully, I was at work, but I was just like, this is not what I expected Ace Frehley to sound like. Anyways, gentlemen, let's we're 7.5 minutes into this. Books that become film and TV. It can go either way really quickly.
Yeah.
I got a couple of examples of what I call
Failure.
the good, bad, and ugly. I mean, there's some obvious choices in there, and I'm pretty sure that we're gonna mention them. But anybody want to start us off? Anything you really? Let's start with something you really enjoyed, or do you have one that you really enjoyed?
Oh, there's tons.
Okay,
There's a massive list of it. I mean, let's go off. Let's throw a curveball here. Well, it's not really a curveball, but it's probably one that you guys probably wouldn't expect. But it's probably one of my favorite childhood stories of all time, and it's one of the most quotable movies of all time. It's full of quotable lines that people for the last 20, 30 years have been quoting. The Princess Bride.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Now, wasn't
Is
the
a book
published after the movie?
I don't think so. Let me look
Or
it up.
you
We'll
you
get our
keep going.
crack research team on this.
I'm pretty sure the book was out beforehand, but just the way they did it in the style, like the movie itself, because they did it in the style of a grandpa reading a book to a sick,
It's a kid, yeah.
oh, what's his name?
Fred Savage.
Fred Savage. Thank you very much. Yeah,
I don't remember his character's name, but it's Fred Savage.
Yeah, it was a 1973 novel of the same name. Yeah, so the novel was out in 73. The movie was out in 87.
I'm definitely thinking of something else. Keep going, because I got a thought on this too.
Yeah, it's just, it had Andre the Giant. It had the famous line of, "Hello, my name is Diego Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die."
That was a spot-on impression, Seb.
That's amazing. Little Mandy Patinkin there. That's good for you. That's awesome.
Dude, he still gets asked to do that. When he's like out with his wife.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, do the line, Mandy, do the line.
And I'm sure, what's his name, who played the little guy who said inconceivable 25,000 times.
Yeah.
He probably has to. Yeah,
inconceivable.
He has to say that. I bet you he gets asked to say that all the time.
I mean,
it's a Cosby Show.
It's a movie that has quotable line after quotable line. Like, it's just it's crazy how many, things are in there that has just imprinted in my mind that I just say on a daily basis that I don't even probably realize that I say it. Oh, he's mostly dead. Billy Crystal, some of the great lines.
Oh, Billy was amazing. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Have fun storming the castle. Yeah. So, And I know we get as our numbers start ticking up and down, I'm sure we have some cruisers here, but what was actually recently suggested to me, because there's a lot of cosplay on the boat and not all of it goes goes strictly for wrestling.
They wanted you to
what?
dress up as Prince Humperdinck.
No, I've called dibs on the Dread Pirate Roberts.
You should do Prince Humperdinck.
I think you're Prince Humperdinck. I think that's
I
sorry,
think if I
Matt.
do the Dread Pirate Roberts thing, I think if I do the Dread
Okay,
Pirate
that's fine.
Roberts thing, I will avoid hearing thanks for the party, Chris. Although maybe not, because they might just it's Jericho's totally dressed up as Princess Bride over there.
Well, maybe you're more like Wesley and not the Dread Pirate Roberts. You're
As
just
you
a little
wish.
simple farm boy living on a farm.
Well, no, I definitely am a simple farm boy. Simple being the key word there.
I think we're all varying degrees of simple, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we can all agree that this, like Seb said, this one knocked it right out of the park.
Oh my god.
Recently, and I guess it's been going around for years at this point. So the suggestion of a sequel to The Princess Bride has been floated out there.
Uh-oh.
And the concept is you bring back Fred Savage, and he is reading the story to his grandchild.
Oh,
So wait, listen.
I don't think I want to.
Mike's
But
already
it's a
formed an
female
opinion.
grandchild. So he tells the story a little differently.
Mhm.
And the daughter, instead of going skip the mushy parts, is like, no, wait, no. What do you mean? I want the good stuff. Don't give me this action nonsense. Give me the good stuff. So they can do a sequel, they can do a remake, and they can put a twist on it because he's telling the story different than he would have heard it, and the kid wants to hear different parts. I think it's a fascinating idea.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah.
So it's like the kid wanting to hear the Notebook.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or but it's
but
told just a little bit different, and they can play into that. It's like,
Sure.
I think my grandfather said it was this.
But
You know
as
what I
the
mean?
story unfolds, she wants more of the action parts because she's getting interested in the action part. Whereas
Exactly.
Fred Savage is the reverse, not wanting the mushy parts, but then he's like, well, I mean, you can say a little bit about the mushy parts.
And I think Sarah's right here. It only
Fred
works
can't be
if
grandpa,
Fred
man.
Savage
Like we're older than
do-
Fred Savage.
to do the storyteller role. I think
that's an interesting concept.
Yeah. It's
I would
been floated
entertain
out
that
there
idea.
for years. So, I mean, it's just a matter of time for somebody in Hollywood goes, yeah, completely original idea. I did not steal it from the internet at all.
No, not at all. Everything's original.
So it's an interesting situation because William Goldman wrote the book and then like 15 years later adapted his own book into a screenplay, which is kind of unusual because usually, I mean, I'm not saying that like writers can't be screenwriters, so it does happen, but for him to like nail the novel and then nail the screenplay is not common in Hollywood, because usually if you sell a book, you sell it to a production house and they throw a bunch of their writers on it. So it's
you sell the rights to the book and you don't often get to put your fingerprints back on it unless you're a big damn deal. And sometimes the big damn deals don't care enough, Stephen King, and they just destroy what you had written 9 times out of 10.
Oh, we'll get to him later.
I bet you will.
We will. We will.
For the good and the bad.
And the ugly, because there's all three
do?
with some of his adaptations are just absolutely gone.
Do you guys know what the full title of the book was? It's a very long title.
Yes, I do, because I actually have it up. The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure, the good parts version.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, I love that. That's so witty. It's so good.
Yeah, and that plays into what Savage was saying. He's like, whoa, hey, no, I don't care about the mushy stuff. Get to the good stuff.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
so
it's a good book. I actually have read the book. Oh my god, it's had to be in at least 20 years, 30 years since I read it, but I have read it at some point in my life, and it's good. Like, but they nailed it in the film for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Absolutely. I mean, I just love it. I absolutely love it. So if any cruiser friends are out there listening to this and you want to get in on the Princess Bride cosplay, we are tinkering it with, but I am calling dibs on the Dread Pirate Roberts, so that's the way that is. Unless we have a whole bunch of them, because I mean, there really was. Ooh, that's an interesting idea, because there
You
was more
guys,
than one Dread
Well,
Pirate
because the
Roberts.
Dread Pirate Roberts is more of like a anybody could be Dread Pirate Roberts, so you could
Yeah,
have like the whole boat full of
you
Dread Pirate
guys could do
Robertses.
that Spider-Man meme where you're all standing in the middle of the deck pointing at each other.
yeah. I mean, that's yeah. So, cruiser friends, hit me up, DM me if you want to get in on that, because it's fairly simple. It's black on black on black on black and a pencil mustache, right? Unless you're a bigger dude and you just want to wear a cloak and be the Dread Pirate Roberts.
But you still have to
Anybody
have
want
the
a
pencil
peanut?
mustache.
That was also a really good Andre impression. I don't know if you got that. That was
Yeah,
thought
I got
nailed
it. Anybody want a
I
peanut?
did. I'm sorry, I didn't get it. Who?
All right, Mike, what do you got for us, buddy?
Okay, so as our conversation goes about writers nailing their adaptation, that they actually had a hand in writing the movie part. Andy Weir wrote The Martian, and
Okay.
Good pull. Good pull, Mike.
I've read that book while I audiobooked it, and it was awesome. And the movie, Andy Weir was a co-writer on it, and I don't know if you guys have seen The Martian.
Yes.
I have.
It's awesome. Like it's one of my favorite Matt Damon movies. It's an amazing space movie. They nailed so much stuff from the book. They left out some stuff, obviously, because you kind of stuff has to just get left out because I don't know, you can't put it all in. It just does. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way. You got to keep the simple-minded people glued to the screen. So, but yeah,
Guilty.
yeah, The Martian is, I don't know what else to say about it. The cast was absolutely awesome. It has Sean Bean. So any movie with Sean Bean, come on, man. But yeah, great film. What do you guys think?
No, I really enjoyed the film. I didn't realize it was a book until I did that thing. I walked through, I think it was a chapters, or I guess they're called Indigo now, and there's Matt Damon's face on a book, and I'm like,
You're like, hey,
oh, okay.
yeah.
But I've never actually read it. I really enjoyed the movie. I know, the book purists kind of shit on it here, there, and beyond, but
the movie was fantastic.
Yeah, the book, like with most books, right? There's so much more character exposition and sort of getting to know who, especially Matt Damon's character. I think his name is Nick Watney. I think something like that.
Yeah.
Matt Damon did a great job of making that character come to life, and if I read the book or I listen to it again, all I can picture is Matt Damon. I can't picture who was described in the book.
Yeah, then he nailed the role. Then
right, it's Matt Damon
yeah.
all day long. The other characters not so much, but Matt Damon was just like, wow. It's
just like when I reread Game of Thrones, I can't get Sean Bean. Like,
no,
he's Eddard Stark. Like,
yeah, absolutely, 100%.
You don't need to describe him because I see him.
Oh yeah, they nailed that casting too, right?
With a lot of those characters, anyway.
Part of that.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure The Martian was a debut novel by Andy Weir.
I believe
also,
so, yeah.
It is one of the highest grossing independent books of all time. Like, wow. It made it blew up. So he won an award, I think, as I'm looking up here, as a debut Goodreads author. Like, he had the highest sales of any debut author on Goodreads ever, I believe. I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but it took 4 years from when the book was written to get the screenplay done and filmed, because he wrote the book in 2011 and the movie I think came out in 2015.
That's insane.
That's unheard of in Hollywood.
Yeah, well, especially for an independent. If it's Stephen King, sure, but an independent guy that's never written before. It's
your first book gets turned into a movie within 4 years of you writing it. Just become a millionaire.
Yeah.
So I hope he negotiated royalties with the movie sales.
Oh, I would imagine he did, because if it's all him, right? So I can imagine that he. Wow.
There's a podcast I listen to, Writers Inc., which is like a writing podcast, and they a couple of episodes ago they did talk about The Martian to a great length about what you can do if you really believe in your work. It's very smartly done, and it's a high concept idea. Like, what if somebody was stranded on Mars? It's a brilliant idea for a book.
Oh, absolutely.
And Matt Damon is a great actor to have in that role, because he's already instantly likable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that if you don't like the main character, the movie's not going to work because it's all about him being stranded on Mars, right? So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's a good pull, Mike.
Yeah. And Matt Damon is so likable. How do you not like Matt Damon? Name me one dislikable Matt Damon.
I was just gonna say Kimmel, but
Jimmy
we all know that.
Well, that's a little deeper than on screen.
That's like such a running joke. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the worst character he's ever played as far as dislikable was in The Departed. And even then,
he's so good in that though.
He got, and you're like, damn it. I know I'm not supposed to like you, but fuck.
Yeah.
Dude, that elevator scene in The Departed just completely threw me by surprise.
Oh,
I
yeah.
won't ruin that for anyone that hasn't seen it, but if you haven't seen The Departed, what the hell's wrong with you?
I went slack-jawed on that one. I'm like,
I did not see it coming at all. The doors open and you're just like, what just happened?
yeah, that's exactly it. I'm like, but
like, no. You're like, no.
But hold on, time out. What are we doing here? Yeah. So I mean, that's a couple of solid pulls there, boys. I just want to share something real quick. I know Mike hasn't seen this because it was part of the ad for this show this week. But I mean, that pretty much sums it up. Right there.
I find myself saying that a lot when I watch sort of, especially books that I've read. And while you're watching, what the fuck? Come on, man.
Well, and if you go
there, it's right there. Just use it.
That was my look when I watched Queen of the Damned.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so disappointed in that movie. I'm just like, oh god, they screwed this up so bad.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm just gonna quickly find the comments. Yes, our new loyal listener Josh commented on that post saying, "How do you know when someone's read the book first? They'll tell you. They'll tell you. Vegans, CrossFitters, and people that read the book first."
Can I say something about that? That is like one of the most annoying things ever when someone just pretentiously is like, well, the book's better. Like, obviously the book's better. The book's always going to be better because you can create the narrative and the setting and you have the picture in your mind that you resonate with most. That's what happens when you read a book. You can fully manifest the scene and the scenario and the story that appeals to you better than watching a movie, because in a movie it's a forced image onto you. So you have to take what the filmmaker has made and then you have to make the decision if you like it or not. And sometimes you don't agree with it because you've already established a different idea or picture in your mind, and it's jarring when a filmmaker gives you a different picture of a character or something. And so already you're, even without giving the movie a chance, you're already in conflict in your mind because you're like, well, that's not how it was in the book. But you have to like just,
it's hard to let go though. It really is. Like,
it is. I agree. Yeah. But you let go of it, right? Just let go of it. Don't sell yourself on having the same experience as when you read the book. Just open your mind and have a different experience with the film because it may be different than the book.
I mean, I think there's also a point of,
well, there's egregious errors as well too.
This really fucked with me. And you mentioned along the lines earlier when you're talking about Sean Bean and Eddard Stark, is when they go so far off the character model. Now with novels, really you don't get a whole lot other than description. So I mean, you can forget a little bit, and they'll throw in little tidbits here or there, and you kind of rebuild the character. So you don't really, you might get like a picture on the cover, but with novels, there's not a whole lot of pictures involved usually.
No, right? But like, Game of Thrones is different because he's so specific on how he wants his characters to be, and then the showrunners missed on a few characters, and the fan base is furious because they're like, this isn't the character that was in the book.
To get past that, I mean, you have to look at some of these things. I know Game of Thrones has it. The book I'm going to discuss definitely has it. Companion issues where they do have art to it, where you can see these characters. And when they go so far off character model, it takes me right out. I mean, I see this a lot, and I'm not going to discuss them today, but I mean, comic books to movies, they'll go so far off a character design, Human Torch, that it is fucking appalling.
Well, the
It
sense of
really
disbelief is you're asking the sense of disbelief in the viewer to be so great that most people can't bridge that.
Mhm.
Well, but I mean,
Yeah,
this is a
and
good
there's
segue to yours. So go
and
for
yeah,
it.
I mean, especially if the character's been around for a while and that low key inadvertent racism of the time where, and I'm going to stick with the Human Torch, it's a bunch of blonde hair, blue eyed people because it was designed in the 60s.
That's right.
And
We like that,
when
right?
you cast I believe it was Michael B. Jordan, it's a little off character model and great actor, but that character's been around for 60 fucking years.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't to be this. And now, when Iron Fist came out, there's a big backlash. Why are we whitewashing this? We're not. They did it in the 70s. This is the way the character was fucking designed. I'm not excusing the fact that the character from the 60s and 70s was probably dealing with a little bit of bias on the creative team. But I wouldn't want to see Black Panther be recast as, just because we mentioned him, Matt Damon either, right? Like, I
No,
wouldn't
you
want to
don't.
see Shang-Chi recast as, Dev Patel. It doesn't just this is what the character is. With novelizations, because it's largely in your mind and you can sort of forget little bits, George R.R. Martin being a little different because he just constantly hammers you with the details, which works for him. And
That's sometimes
sometimes
a
it's
negative.
what am I
Yeah.
watching? Like Tom Cruise. Oh, Tom Cruise did really good with his 2 Jack Reacher movies. Alan Richardson is the
Is
character
Jack Reach.
model.
Yeah.
That's the characters. If you haven't seen it on Prime Video, highly recommend the series.
Yeah, because
Um,
isn't he in the book? Isn't Jack Reacher supposed to be like 6'6" or something? Like he's supposed to be a
you know what?
massive man.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know what? Let's just get into the Reacher series. I wasn't going to pull this one.
Okay.
I had started with another one, but let's talk about Reacher. Reacher is one of these ones where they've done basically 2 completely separate things. There's 2 Tom Cruise movies. Tom Cruise, not the biggest dude. Alan Richardson, big dude.
He was Hawk
Big
in oh god,
Titans.
thank you.
In Titans, yeah.
Yes, okay. I haven't seen Reacher, so I'm just trying to pull an image out of my head.
Yeah, and he's
a big man.
He's a
He's a large
mountain of a
man.
man.
He is.
He is absolutely a mountain of a man. He's recently taken a little bit of fire because his let's just say his workout routine is not purely natural, and that's fine. I don't give a shit. He's not competing for anything other than a role,
and he's not hurting
there's
anybody but himself. So
yeah,
whatever.
and there's not for and let's be honest, there's not a whole lot of roles that he's really lucky to be pulling it out. Doing the superhero thing, doing the Jack Reacher thing. There's not a whole lot of roles that are purely competition based and size based. So it's not going to last him forever. He might be a great action star. The Rock, the same deal. Clearly a little bit better shape than he was when he was wrestling full time. But Reacher's one of those ones it's a Tom Cruise movie, so you're in for a ride. You know it's going to be solid. It's not going to shit the bed. But Reacher was just like, this isn't the character. Tom Cruise is like 5'5". I mean, famously going back to the running Family Guy gag where he's basically the side of Brad Williams. And you get into the TV show on Prime, which I highly recommend.
I heard
2
it's really good,
seasons.
actually.
I knew it was coming out, but when it dropped, I didn't realize it had dropped. And I was able to just hammer through the whole first season real quick, and I really enjoyed it. But they did a much better job sticking with the character and the source material in the Prime TV series. Granted, with TV series, you have a longer time to tell a story. You don't have to cut up as much. You don't necessarily have to leave out as much, which can also be detrimental if you have to stretch. Right? Like if you're looking to fill 3 movies out of a 1 book deal, it doesn't fucking work. But because they can turn these into, and they're not, I mean, sure, there's action and stuff in them, but they're not like an action TV show. It's a mystery. He is this mountain of a man that happens to be a military detective or retired military detective that's wandering the earth like Kane, the Kung Fu, not from WWE.
That's where I
That
was going.
is, he's gone completely minimalistic. He's got like the clothes on his back, the money in his wallet, and a toothbrush, and he is just doing the whole um, wandering the earth, helping people thing, and just
So I have a question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
Do you like the Reacher movies with Tom Cruise?
I enjoyed them, but they definitely weren't.
They
What the
weren't
book
true to
had.
the character, but
They weren't true to the
yeah.
character.
I'm super curious as to how that manifested, because like I don't know if he was chosen to play Reacher or if Tom Cruise read a script and goes, "Hey, I like this. I want to be
That's
involved in that."
exactly how that meant. I think it was Tom Cruise had read the book, and he's
How
Tom Cruise.
how do you say no to him though?
You
Even
don't
if
know.
it's so far away, but you're like, well,
No.
it's Tom Cruise, so we're gonna make money on it regardless.
Mhm.
Even though if the material, like he doesn't fit the character properly, you as a producer, you can't say no to Tom Cruise. He's arguably one of the most bankable film actors alive
Well,
today,
it's
right?
not
So
just that, but the what's overlooked about Tom is he has incredible clout in Hollywood. He has had the
he's
best
got
back
carte
end
blanche pretty much.
Yeah, because he is, he's hundreds of millions of dollars. I'll Google his net worth later. He gets to do what he freaking wants because he had that track record, and it's been going on for,
Yeah.
oh geez, 30 years at this point, where he's just had like, yeah, I have the
Also,
back end deal. I have the money. We're making this movie, and the studios aren't arguing with him because,
No.
like, well, you provide a return. When they were filming, I don't. It might have been the last Mission Impossible, the one that just came out when they were filming that during COVID. I mean, he went viral because he had one of his meltdowns on set
that
because
was
somebody
COVID
wasn't wearing.
related with masks.
Yeah,
I totally
he
agree with
wasn't.
him on
He
that
wasn't.
though.
Yeah, he wasn't. I mean, it was one of his classic meltdowns, but it was completely justified because they were basically the only thing filming at that time, and it's like we are setting the standard for this fucking industry. If you
You
don't
know what?
want to be on board with what we have to do to get this done, get the fuck off my set.
To
And he
be on,
lost his mind. It
to be
was
honest,
Christian Bale like, and the guy
yeah.
deserved it
Dude,
because
it's
it is
like,
hundreds of
geez.
millions of dollars. It is a major motion picture. It is a piece of a large franchise. And it was the rules set out, whether he liked them or not. Because, I mean, let's be honest, it's Scientology, so God knows what was going on there. But that was what needed to be done. They would just get shut down. And good for him.
There's $100 million gone to waste because of some idiot that wasn't wearing his mask because he signed a contract for the rules that, like
And
you signed a contract for a certain protocol of COVID rules and you're breaking that. He has every right to get mad at you for
And
sure.
how many people would be put out of work that,
Yeah.
in an industry that was shut down? How many people that were working when no others were all of a sudden be sent home? It's like, yeah, no, Jim fucked it up for everybody.
This is what I used to say during COVID at my job because I work in a pub, obviously, right? And people would
Well,
argue
Mike's
this.
tuned out, so we're talking COVID. Let's avoid the COVID
Okay.
thing. Let's
All
get
right,
back
all
to
right.
Cruise.
Yeah. Stay on
let's
the
get
track,
to-
guys.
So here's the interesting thing is like I look back on his filmography recently, and other than The Mummy, which came out in 2017,
Ooh,
I
that was
can't
bad.
really see a bad movie that he's made in like the last 10, 20 years. Like you have Mission Impossible, Top Gun Maverick, the other Mission Impossible, Fallout, American Made, Jack Reacher, Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, Edge of Tomorrow, Oblivion, the first Jack Reacher, Rock of Ages.
Oh, and you know what? Those Edge of Tomorrow and Oblivion were underrated. If you haven't
Yeah.
seen it, go watch.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Then he
Yeah.
did the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Night and Day, Valkyrie, Tropic Thunder, Lions for Lambs. And that goes Lions for Lambs goes back to 2007. So he's
Honestly, if you want to go back to it, I think probably the last truly oops that he did was Mission Impossible 2. That did not go well.
well, he did War of the Worlds as well, but after Mission.
I liked War of the Worlds. I thought it was a good adaptation.
War of the Worlds was horrible.
But 2004, arguably one of his best movies, Collateral. And then before that, he did Last Samurai. So 2003, 2004 was a great year for him.
Mm-hmm.
Minority Report, Vanilla Sky, which I really liked, but a lot of people didn't like it.
Vanilla Sky can be classified as a oops too. Didn't do so well.
I mean, I understand what they were going for. It,
yeah.
people
I mean, it was
resonate
not
with that.
typical for him. right? Like
Yeah.
usually if he's got an oops,
And he does that from time to time. Like he'll do like these main actor roles where it's Tom Cruise, and then he'll come out with like Collateral where he plays the villain, or
so
Interview with the Vampire where he plays the villain, Tropic Thunder where he plays somebody that's
a side character.
completely different.
He's just
Yeah,
a complete side character.
he's in the
under
movie
makeup,
for 5 minutes.
but a memorable 5 minutes.
Oh
Anyways,
my goodness, yeah.
so I mean, Reacher's an example of an off-model character. The movies worked, like they weren't bad, but if you knew the source material, you were like, no,
Yeah.
bad Tom, bad. And the TV show very much on brand, very much on
Yeah.
brand. And that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of where things can go sideways, right? Like you sign the book rights away, and you don't often get a chance to be in there, like the slipping my mind, like Princess Bride or like George Martin did. It's just okay. I got this big check. I guess
Yeah.
let's see it to movie theaters, and that's where a lot of butthurt comes. I mean, Kubrick and Stephen King did not agree with how The Shining went. They were
No,
not
King
fans.
hated.
We can talk
King
about
hated
that too.
Yeah, we can, because King hated. Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to something different here.
Okay.
Seb.
Well, I'm going to talk about this one because this could arguably be classified as one of the greatest book adaptations ever in the history of cinema, The Godfather.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh, good call.
Mario Puzo's work, The Godfather. I mean, what do you say about The Godfather? Won Academy Awards. It has arguably Marlon Brando's greatest performance ever.
It's perfection.
It's such a amazing movie, right?
The
book was amazing.
Can I make you guys feel like
he's
most
gonna say that he's never seen it.
He's never seen The Godfather.
I've never seen it end to end.
Okay, no, that's fine. Not everybody has.
I can't believe you.
But it's interesting because obviously book one's an adaptation. I don't think Godfather 2. I think Godfather 2. Seb, correct me if I'm wrong. Is an original screenplay. It wasn't. Was it based on any novel? Because two is better. So. 2 is better than The Godfather, which is
arguably.
You get arguably, but you get perfection, and then you get absolute perfection with 2.
The rare awesome follow-up sequel, right?
Yeah, which is Godfather 2 is so good.
We talked about bad sequels, but I mean, down the road we'll be talking good sequels. Godfather 2 is probably the high watermark.
Mm-hmm. I haven't read The Godfather, to be honest with you, but as I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, I think they pull. I think the Godfather movie was not the complete story in the Godfather book, because what I'm looking here says that they're pulling loosely from the Godfather. Okay. So it's probably it's both a sequel and a prequel, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it is.
Yeah,
Matt.
Because they do
get 7 hours in a day. Just watch Godfather 1 and 2.
Well,
they're long.
Yeah, three is a bit of a U-turn.
Three's not really. Maybe you can look at it now, 30 whatever years later. I mean, it's like one of those things. Maybe it ages better with time, but I don't think so, because it wasn't good back then. And
it had Sophia Copeland in it.
She's a great director and a great writer, but her acting.
That was her first acting, and you're putting
her acting chops. They weren't there yet.
It's just like
yeah.
I mean, you're
Look
not.
at this. Yeah, it was. Oh man, The Godfather. What can you say about it? Did you know that they actually? Okay, so you know the scene, Matt. You probably don't know this because you haven't seen the movie, but the scene where there's the horse's head in the bed.
In the bed, yeah.
So they actually got a real horse's head from a butcher's shop.
Oh,
and the actor didn't know about it. Oh, and the reaction is actually 100% real.
Holy. Oh my God. You'd be traumatized for life having some. That's disgusting. Imagine? Having that in your
So let's take a look at the cast here that was in The Godfather. You had Marlon Brando, you had Al Pacino, you had James Caan, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton. It's just so stacked.
And Talia Shire, come on, man! Can't forget about Adrienne Balboa. That was her big coming out role too. Just absolutely stacked. And then 2 had Robert De Niro as a young Vito.
Yeah, that's true.
right? And he didn't speak a word of English in the whole movie. He spoke Italian in the whole movie. It was awesome.
Boppity boopity.
No, not quite.
I'm just quoting Family Guy. Nobody get mad. I speak their language. Boppity boopity.
That was said, by the way.
Oh God. Matt, you should
know what?
actually.
As somebody that is the only person in this podcast that has a second language, you may want to be careful with that, son.
That's true. So the budget for the movie was 7.2 million, and the box office gross was 291 million.
And that's in like 1970 money too, right? That's
1972.
72. My bad.
But
wow.
seriously, like to make 200, oh my goodness. So I mean, it's something. Matt, if you haven't seen the movie, you have to watch it. It's a classic.
It's one of those things. Every once in a while, I'll scroll past it looking for something else. I'm like, ooh, I could.
It does drag at parts. I mean, because it's a long. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say it drags.
But
that's
the wrong word.
Like, don't get me wrong here either. Like, I've seen giant chunks of it.
Yeah,
I've never seen it end to end
from start to finish.
I've probably seen the entire movie if I put the chunks in there, but I haven't seen it in order. It's one of those ones. I mean, I used to say it about a lot of stuff working in the projection booth. It's like, yeah, I've seen it, just not in order. And people are like, what the fuck does that mean? It's like, well, I had 10 minutes here and 15 minutes here and a half hour here, so I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen all of it. But it's kind of like Pulp Fiction. It's not in order. Like I can't piece it together. Right. And so that may be the case with The Godfather, but I'm not willing to say I'm sure of it because it is a 3-hour movie. So
it is long.
Carve out some time, son. Carve out some time.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to say it's the best book adaptation to movie, but it's definitely in the conversation when we're talking about phenomenal book adaptation.
Well, I think the film standards, it's like in the top 10 of all time, right? So it probably is one of the best.
Well, if you want to go by box office gross, there's 2 movies that were book series that do that, but that's
kind of that's not a real stat though. That's because wasn't like Gone with the Wind a book?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure Casablanca was a book.
It's just they take these phenomenal books and
since the dawn of cinema, when writers were still super lazy, they would just steal from other writers.
Sure.
And that's.
Are you saying that doesn't happen today?
Right. Oh, we're a little more litigious now, so you got to be a little more careful. But I'm sure there's stuff stuck in legal hell because one writer went, "Yeah, this is a good idea," and another writer went, "That was my idea."
Yeah. Right.
So it ends up stuck in legal hell, and we never see it, or it never gets pushed through to final production. So, Mike, what do you got for us?
Well, I'm going back to Rob Reiner land because he directed The Princess Bride. A couple of years prior to The Princess Bride, he had a big hand in adapting a Stephen King short story, which is probably you guys know I love The Goonies. It's like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But this one, honestly, it's one of the only movies that makes me feel like I'm 12 again.
It's a classic too, right?
It is, and the 4 main characters they were cast perfect. I'm talking Stand By Me.
Oh, I thought you were talking Dreamcatcher, but that's okay.
I was talking about. Actually, I was gonna. A little Maximum Overdrive for everybody. But I don't know.
I was talking about this last night. Actually, I was at dinner with a friend. We were talking about Stand By Me.
Yeah,
it's just like such a good coming of age movie. It's about like kids. Yeah,
it's kids being kids, and it's sort of because we were the tail end of that generation where we could just go out and do whatever we wanted, but
we were able to
do out in the morning,
right?
Yeah, just like fuck out of the house and don't come back till it's dark. Kind of
see you at dinner.
Yeah, and then after dinner
for
you
8 hours.
Again, right? You leave again till it got dark in the summertime, so you'd be out till 10 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah, Street Legs came on, everybody bugged out.
Yeah, and
dude, we all had those little like play forts in the forest where we had like Playboy 100%. Magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah, you play war or guns or whatever you called it, and you'd be
knights
whoever,
and dragons or whatever.
Yeah, and when I watch this movie, it brings me back to that sort of time in my adolescence, and watching sort of the what could have been a River Phoenix, and even just the four of those kids together, like they were bonded. Because I'm pretty sure they had to spend months together before they made the movie, and they were like the best of friends, and you could totally just see it. And I don't know, I'm trying to get my kids to watch it, and Cooper's being very resistant, because every time I say you have to watch this movie of my childhood, 9 times out of 10 it's absolutely.
It's because you're saying you have to.
Because that's the thing, I'm saying he has to, and he's like, no, I'm not. I'll watch it on my own accord.
And when we did when we were doing our Fincher movies, I had Izzy sit down with me and watch. So we watched The Game and we watched Seven. And after seeing The Game, she's like, yeah. And she was the same way. She's like, I don't know. I'm like, just give it a shot. Give it a shot. So, twice she
so
came
good.
out, like, okay, I'll spend some time with the old man.
Right.
I'll watch one of his movies. We got to the end of The Game. She's like, I am never not watching a movie that you recommend ever again.
Right.
So good, right?
So sometimes you just got to lay that groundwork. I think Stand By Me, if you can get them to sit through that may be your TSN turning point of the entire situation.
100%.
What interested me about Stand By Me is how life played out, and each of the four kind of mirrored their Stand By Me characters' fates. Like Will Wheaton went on to be famous, but kind of behind the camera as a writer and a board game designer, and sometimes
Stephen King does a lot of that in his books, where he especially when it involves children, like they'll echo what. I mean, he did it in It with all of the characters too, right?
I don't think he could have predicted River Phoenix dying outside.
Oh, you mean in like real life?
In real life.
Oh, I thought you meant as the characters in the story.
Corey Feldman kind of went through some issues, never really made it as big as he could have been. I don't remember Vern's thing, but he just sort of faded off. Jerry O'Connell still popped up doing his thing.
Well, Jerry O'Connell was pretty big in the 90s, like when he grew up, and
huge,
right?
Sliders, yeah.
And
then he, what was it? He was doing something. I mean, he did manage to get Rebecca Romaine to marry him too. So I mean, good.
He did that kangaroo movie, didn't he?
That was probably the end. That was the end. It was like, okay,
yeah. I mean,
it's over, buddy.
Kind of slid downhill there. But I mean, let's be honest here. He married Rebecca Romaine. Like, the man won life. He doesn't have to do anything else. No. I mean, he's like Billy Kidman and David Flair, completely outkicked their coverage as to who they got to crawl into bed with them. And Jerry is really one of the first internet sensations as far as the quote unquote glow up. Because I mean, he was the fat dumpy kid in Stand By Me, and he got to his early to mid 20s.
Is he the kid that does like the vomit story in it?
Yeah.
No, that was Gordy. Gordy did that.
That was Gordy. That was
okay.
Yeah,
Vern was like the comic relief. He's like, hey, I got the comb. Blah blah.
Okay, remember that.
He's that guy, right?
Crawling along the train tracks as the train is coming.
Yeah. But I haven't read the short story.
Do you know what the short story is called?
It's The Body.
It is The Body.
But I did a little bit of reading up about it, and sort of I just wanted to, because there's always in King movies, there's always major differences between what's on the page and what's on the screen. And in this one, there's not a ton. Do you guys want to know any sort of?
Yeah, okay. Give us some.
So in the book, obviously at the end, Chris ends up dying in a knife attack, same as the book. And then Vern and Teddy, this grow up to be normal people, forklift operator, and Vern is whatever Vern, I can't remember what Vern ended up being. But they also both die when they don't even make it to the 30. I think Teddy dies in a fire and Vern died somehow too. So the ending's a little more, well, it's King, right? So he kind of makes it not quite the most happy ending. And Vern's brother wasn't Eyeball. Vern's brother was Ace. No, Chris's brother was Eyeball. Yeah, so Vern's brother was Kiefer Sutherland's character was Ace, and it's like, no, not really. And
interesting.
Yeah, there's just all these sort of little subtle things. And then after they find the body and Gordy pulls the gun, Chris pulled the gun in the book, not Gordy, because it makes more sense for sort of Chris to pull the gun because he's sort of the sort of the tougher badass. But
also there's leverage there for him to get stabbed later because he pulls the gun.
Yes.
That makes
Right?
sense.
Yeah. And after they chase, after Ace and Eyeball and those guys go away, they actually come back and beat the shit out of the kids, one by one, and then sort of that's how they get home. And they're all
So they made a PG version for the movie, but the book is definitely more horrific in terms of like King's choices, character choices.
Yeah, and it's funny how.
Go ahead, Mike.
King obviously a lot of times in his books mirrors himself. You know, Gordy's a writer. You know, there's a lot of that in a lot of his books.
Yeah.
Bill Denbrough, famous writer, blah blah blah. But apparently, when King was a little kid, he witnessed a kid getting hit by a train. I don't know if it's true, but I was just
that's got to be a fuel for so much trauma.
This is some internet research, whether so take it for what it is. But yeah, apparently at the age of 4, that's what I read. I'm kind of calling bullshit on it, but this is. Well, I mean,
let's not forget that one scene in Pet Sematary that kicked the movie off too, right? I mean, so that explains a couple of things. That's there's some puzzle pieces dropping.
He also got hit by a car later on in life. I can't imagine that if this was the true story, that it would. Echoes of a train hitting a kid would flash before his eyes.
And the beauty of that, him getting hit by a car, he included that in the Dark Tower series. I think it was books. Was it book 6? It started in book 5 and then it went into book 6, and he's actually in book 6. Like Stephen King is in regular world. It's a whole thing, and him and Roland are all like.
So do you think that when he was first starting to write books, like Carrie, for example, like early on, do you think that he had this whole Dark Tower metaverse, everything's connected in mind, or do you think he retconned it after a while? Because it's hard for me to believe that was planned from the very first time.
I don't think it was planned at all. I think because the Dark Tower, like the first book, sat in a drawer for years, and then
I mean, if it was, that's fucking brilliant.
No, I honestly don't think so. I think especially with the Dark Tower, I think because it took him like 30 years to write all 7 books.
Yeah, you think at some point in the middle of the Dark Tower series, he's like, hang on a second, what if I just connect?
Well, I mean, he has centered most of his stuff in and around Maine for the most part too.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And parts of Colorado.
I think Stephen King is a prime example, and he's been on record as saying this, is like, I had a contract, so I just did a bunch of blow and cranked out the next book I was supposed to. And then it's just like, I
100%. That movie is the biggest pile of poo. Like, I love the Dark Tower series for everything that it is.
Dark Tower's on my list of movies that made me bad, said
That
Sarah.
is the epitome of cramming everything into one movie, which made no sense whatsoever.
In an hour and a half. Like,
dude, it should be a series. Like, it should be like a 7-season series.
That's one of the prime ones. And that, I mean, because especially you got multiple fucking books.
Yeah.
Like, take your time. You can do this correctly. Nope. And I am shocked Idris Elba's career survived that. I'll be honest.
Well, and McConaughey too, right? Like, it's don't even get me started on the Dark Tower movie, because it's just Jesus. Because I think with the Stephen King, we can camp here for a minute. With the King adaptations, like, his books rely so heavily on getting to know characters and character nuance that doesn't translate to the culture, and it doesn't translate to the screen, because there's never enough time. Because it's like this thick, and then the stand is 4 feet. It's like 800,000 pages, and you can't ever say, like, well, Game of Thrones kind of nailed it.
Game of Thrones was doing really well.
Yeah,
make a call to Hollywood, Sarah.
Until the last season.
Well, I've heard they're making the Dark Tower into a TV show. That's what I've heard.
I would hope so. So, I mean,
because you can do books 1 and 2 easily, and then 3, and then 4 can be its own thing because it's a prequel book.
I mean, I said it last week. Can we maybe stop fucking around with good movies and remaking them, and just remake a good concept that sucked ass when you shot it?
Yeah, I'm totally for that.
Fingers in the pie.
Well, then same thing with, which I couldn't bear watching The Stand, the remake of The Stand, when they put that Prime show that came out.
That with the one with Amber Heard?
I enjoyed it.
Yes.
That's with Amber Heard, right?
I got like,
fortunately.
It was funny that meme you put up, or we're talking about people who've read the book and say, well, that's not in the movie, or that's not in the book. 5 minutes in, I was livid. I'm like, this is garbage. This book is 1,000 pages long, and you're fucking it up already. Like, just just flip the pages and write down
I
the
mean-
words that are on the pages, and that's what you have. Like, why?
Well, I mean, there's
I just don't get it.
yeah. I mean, okay. So I'm
got
not
a
going to
good
get too
cast,
deep
though.
into it, but you boys have seen Sin City.
Yes.
A long time ago.
So the way they adapted that is Robert Rodriguez went out, bought a bunch of the Sin City comic books, took an X-Acto knife to it, and that's how he storyboarded the motherfucker.
There you go. See,
And that's why Sin City worked, because it was like even down to Frank Miller's style of art. It worked. You don't see a lot of that in Stephen King movies. Yes, he's got some classics out there with his name on them, but when you dive deep into it, not a lot of those classics made the source material proud.
No.
In the case of something like The Shining, it was like, yeah, we took the title and a couple of character names, and then here's your check. Go find a mountain of blow and write the Langoliers or something like that.
Oh my God, the Langoliers. Have you ever seen that miniseries? Holy shit, that was
Yes.
awful.
mhm.
The CGI was atrocious for that.
Oh, it was so bad.
It's a
Yeah,
good
no, it was-
concept. I actually like the idea. It's just the CGI was just laughable at
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
I
Man.
So
have
Sarah sent me a list of stuff here, and you can see the chat. She's blowing it up. So her list of things that went really well: Little Women, The Shining, To Kill a Mockingbird, Lord of the Rings, The Help, Jurassic Park, Hunger Games, Green Mile, Gone with the Wind, and the things that made her mad: Aragon, Maze Runner, Dark Tower, Neverending Story, and Da Vinci Code. I didn't know Neverending Story was a book, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So that's what she's got going on there. But we're almost at an hour, so Seb, let's get
I
another
have,
one in.
I have two that I want to talk about. I don't know if we'll get
Yeah.
to both, but one we have to talk about.
Sure.
Because it's arguably one of the greatest endings of all time is The Shawshank Redemption, which is also
Yeah.
another Stephen King novella. I think
short
it was
story,
called
yeah.
like
Rita Hayworth, The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Enough material for a whole Stephen King show.
I think
But-
so.
I think we
Yeah.
can really break
So-
that down sometime.
So
in the future.
let's not talk about Shawshank. We'll revisit that
Yes,
in the
leave it.
future, because on a
We
lot
should
of
actually
lists-
watch them. What we should do is watch the movie and then read the short story.
Dude,
and
Mike,
then
I've seen the
compare it
movie
to
100
book.
times, but I'll rewatch it anytime.
Mhm.
So the book series, honestly, which is technically better than the movie, but the trilogy should have won 3 Oscars, if you ask me, is The Lord of the Rings. And what Peter Jackson did with The Lord of the Rings, I don't think anyone else on the planet could have nailed it as good as he
No.
could have.
No.
He lived and breathed Lord of the Rings. He cast it so well. I cannot see a flaw in any of the 3 movies. I mean, some people may argue that it drags on a little bit because if you watch the extended cuts, they're like 4 hours each, so it's over 12 hours of cinema.
Oh, yeah.
But it's Lord of the Rings. There's so much material.
But
in
there's
there.
also the source material to back up that 4 hours you're seeing on the
correct.
screen.
Yeah,
right?
there's so many
Yes,
characters.
for
And so,
that
yeah,
trilogy.
yeah.
We won't discuss the other one, which
That-
is
we're not talking
Another
about
one?
The Hobbit.
Nope, nope,
Yeah,
that
No,
never
but
happened.
hold
So-
on. They are examples of the 2 easiest ways to fuck up
100%.
a book is either you stretch it and what you put in there is hot garbage backed up by CGI that you probably should have paid more for, The Hobbit, or you have somebody leak the fact that you cut out a major portion of the trilogy. In Lord of the Rings, there was anger, flat out fucking anger that Tom Bombadil was not in the original film
Mhm.
until it came
So
out.
I have a theory about that. I think the only reason it was in the book is it was a time sink because he needed to have characters move to certain parts of the world, and the only way he could do that is to like write a scene that involved them staying in like the Barrow Dens and Tom Bombadil, because it didn't
Yeah,
it
no,
wouldn't
it's-
make time. It wouldn't make sense time wise for them to go to where they were going to. I think it was the Prancing Pony inn
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
that, and
Yes.
meet the people in like because Aragon needed to get there somehow, so he
Yes.
needed something to do.
He needed
Yeah.
to show us what the others were doing. Now, granted, it's like he could have solved it in a sentence, and it's like the hobbits were tired because they've been walking through the woods for 3 months. But
Yeah.
he wrote that scene, and Bombadil was a very specific character and apparently very beloved. When I read the books, I was like, "This is stupid," but
he doesn't serve the story, like the
No.
core story at all. And so like, yeah, I understand it's an important scene because it's like a spirit entity that is one of the most all powerful things in Middle Earth, right? But you don't really need it.
No,
the
and at the
story,
same
right?
time,
So-
being that powerful, it's like you want to maybe do some of the lifting here, bud.
Yeah, just you know,
I mean,
just give me a
just
hand with
stand here.
something, you know.
It's like I mean, it's kind of like you put the ball over the fence. It's like little help, and it's like the guy's got a cannon and throws it from the left field fence to first. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
why aren't you playing? But I mean, that's one of the easiest ways to piss off a fandom and ruin a movie is to take a giant chunk out. The Tom Bombadil stuff very easily removed. Nobody even thinks that it's not there now that they've seen how they did it, and
because it makes sense and it's truthful to the story that he's telling on film, right? It doesn't need to be there.
That's one of the things with film period is there's not a lot of, unless it's like 4 months later after a cut scene, there's not a lot of tracking the time frame. I said this about the Iron Claw is it's hard to track the time frame unless you know what to look for in the clues, what they're doing, who they're wrestling.
Same because they're jumping around in time.
It takes place over something like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like 18 months to 3 years from start of the story to the end, something like that.
It's quite a journey, yeah. But they do rest at points. Like when they get to Rivendell, they're in Rivendell for
weeks,
weeks, right? You know, you know, when they go to Gondor, they're there for a while. Like it's Helm's Deep is a battle that they have to plan for, so they're in Helm's Deep. So and
just the sheer distance of the walking, like it's one of the more famous maps that are out there. And when
they could have just taken the Eagles, right?
When you do the conversion,
that's the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Conversion and realize that for the most part, these little dudes are walking.
Yeah, from
one end of the map to the other,
and they're hobbits. They're not fast walkers.
Yeah, it's something like the equivalent of walking one side of Australia to the other. Like, it's something ridiculous. Like
it's
I've
probably
seen
bigger than that, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
it's probably like the United States of America really is bigger, or maybe even bigger than that.
I've seen that comparison somewhere. I don't remember, but it was literally like one end of a continent to another.
I do have to say that there's not a single casting choice that I disagree with. I think it is masterfully casted. Lord of the Rings, all characters, like you know, even when you go to Game of Thrones, there's a couple of actors that I feel were wrong for the part. I do not feel that way about Lord of the Rings at all. I cannot see a single badly casted. There are some question marks, like wasn't it Orlando Bloom's first acting gig, like legitimate acting gig? And how can you see anyone else play Legolas at this point? You know, Liv Tyler nailed Arwen. You know, well, if you want to get technical,
big question marks. Like she had not done anything that serious. I mean, she's drop dead gorgeous.
But she gave
Empire Records. Come on, man.
Oh, so good in that. But she gave such a sensibility to that character, that like soft love of like, because you need her. She's an elf. You need to believe that she's, you know, a elf of nature that loves nature, and just the tenderness that she had for that character just sold that character so well, you know. And then she was a badass as well, you know, with the calling of the water on the ring rates.
That's right. Give up the halfling, she elf,
dude. And I don't know. It's so well done. Every character in that is beautiful. Ian McKellen as Gandalf, amazing, absolutely amazing.
Christopher Lee did a great job. I understand why he was kind of pissed they were killing him off when they did. But you were never going to get to the real end of Saruman with that series of movies. Because I mean, they skip out 2 or 3 chapters between, you know.
So Mordor, he wasn't killed. He wasn't killed in the book. Saruman, he was banished.
Yeah, he ends up in the Shire.
Yeah. He ends up in the Shire.
And they get him there. He wasn't killed at the 2 Towers. He ends up, everybody else is headed to Mordor. He packs up, heads to the Shire, and destroys it. And then the hobbits come back and sort him out real quick. But Christopher Lee was pissed that he didn't get to do that scene. But it's like, but we have the end of the movie that people are going to want to see. We don't need to go and tack this.
Yeah,
useless
you don't need
shit
the
on.
destruction of the Shire at the very end of the movie.
And that's much like Tom Bombadil. It works for the movie. It probably would have screwed up the release, even if you had tacked it on to another 30 minutes of the already 7 hours long Lord of the Rings director's cut.
I have some things
they,
to say.
They lifted properly out of that film, and it obviously did very well. Whereas the other three, they stretched too much. You know what I mean? I think that's a prime example. Much like Reacher, it's a prime example of what to do and what not to do.
So here's some interesting bits of trivia. So Russell Crowe was originally thought to be Aragorn. I'm not sure what happened there, but they ended up going with Stuart Townsend and then did not like him, and then cast Viggo Mortensen. Uma Thurman was originally slated to play Arwen, but she fell pregnant and had to decline the role, and then was later offered the role of Eowyn as well, but she turned it down. And then you're gonna love this one. Apparently, Nicolas Cage was also in the conversation of Aragorn.
Oh my god, that movie! Honestly,
I think they dodged a bullet there. To be perfectly honest with you,
no way.
You think?
Yeah,
Would have been amazing if he was in it. Then you get William Shatner play what's his name?
I don't know if I believe that because it's coming strictly from him. So I don't know if like he was.
I mean,
he was actually given the role, or if he was in consideration, because that's two.
I mean, if he says it enough, maybe they'll remake it in an alternate universe, and we'll get to see him like we saw him as Aragorn, like we saw him as Superman. I can just go pound every bit of sand too.
Oh yeah, right.
Apparently, also this is a lesser known fact too. Apparently, Daniel Day-Lewis passed on the role of Aragorn as well, but he that was Peter Jackson's first choice initially when he was first casting it. I'm taking all this off the What Culture website, so take it with a grain of salt. I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but yeah. So yeah, interesting.
All right, so we're just a hair over an hour here, and I want to bring up one more, and I got two in my mind. I'm just going to real quick. Clive Cussler, great author. He's got a series of James Bond-esque books spacing around a character named Dirk Pitt. He's a James Bond. He's like a marine archaeologist, biologist kind of guy. They've done a couple of his books. They did Raise the Titanic. I haven't seen that, but the one that I fucking appalled me was
Part
Sarah with Matthew McConaughey. It was one of my favorite books. You remember back in the day, 7-Eleven had that super gulp. I mean, it was like 2 liters of pop out of the fountain, and you had to fold it like a Chinese food container to get it out of the store.
I don't remember that.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, and anyways, I remember reading the part where they were stranded in the desert and it lasts for a couple of chapters, and my mouth went dry. He was so descriptive in it that I chugged that entire thing, and
Nice.
my bladder was unhappy with me, as were my knees, because at 16 years old, I'm doing squats every fucking 10 minutes to get off the couch.
This is the moment that as a good friend or a best friend of someone, that's when you punch them right in the stomach.
Oh
yeah.
Wow. Nothing says.
I would have unabashedly just eat all over you.
Yeah, I know.
Which, I mean, if you're into it, that's fine. I'm not going to kink shit.
I am on record of not being into that. Just so everyone's clear.
Somebody check Seb's Tinder and see if he's deleted that. Anyways, I hated it. I fucking hated it. I thought they had a really good opportunity to do something Bond-esque and just do more of his books. They absolutely fucked it up. It stands alone as a movie if you don't know the source material. But the one I really want to talk about, it's ongoing. Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time. And so they're very quick to deny that, Seb. Yeah, methinks he doth protest too much. It's ongoing.
Right. Well, it's time for me to.
They're doing a really good job of adapting one season to one book.
That's on Amazon Prime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
dude, that is.
They're going to be able to keep it up though, because it is a 15-book series, including the prequel.
Well, it's not on
Um,
Netflix, so you know it's not going to get easily canceled. Because Netflix
Right, it won't get
just
canceled at all.
decides to cancel like some of
Right.
their best shows because reasons. I don't know.
Yeah,
Because they know they're going to have another one
because
coming
they
out next
spent
week.
$500 million on wrestling. That's a whole other
Maybe that's
discussion.
why they were canceling all those shows.
Yeah, so it's well, and we mentioned that a couple weeks ago that the money for that has to come out of somewhere, right? Um, anyways, Wheel of Time. It's an end of the world kind of story. There is the Dark One and his minions, and there's three boys from a small town and two girls from the same town, and they just become ensnarled in this. One is supposed to be basically is a chosen one. He's the dragon reborn. The first couple of books, it's very shaky as to which one of the three it is. All three of them have very big roles to play. All three of them are what's called spun back out by the wheel. So they're reincarnated old school heroes of legend, and it's called Tavarine, I believe. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but the world sort of spins things around them. Like we see this in a lot of movies where the fate bends to the chosen one and the destiny and all that, and prophecy, and this sort of things work out for them the way they're supposed to work out so that they can do all these things. And the girls all become big time powerful magic users.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Like the males cannot use magic in the
they
Wheel of
can,
Time.
but it's tainted. What it is the Dark
They
One
corrupted them.
It's been it's described as like the purest. When they talk about the women, it's described as the purest water in a raging river, and they're just able to manipulate it. And when it's described as the guys, it's the same thing. They handle it differently, but it's polluted. It's got an oil slick through it, and it will drive them mad. And the structure of each book, I mean, there are points where you can tell he's stretching a chapter just to do exactly what you're talking about with Lord of the Rings. It's like, we got a time. What are these characters up to in the months that these characters are doing this? And so they kind of stretch a few things here and there. Robert Jordan, the original writer, he passed away with 3 books left to do. He had notes, he had chapters, and he found a writer he trusted to complete it, and he did. Brandon Sanderson did a fantastic job completing the last 3 books, to the point where I'm reading the last couple of chapters, which were written by Jordan himself, but the way Sanderson filled in the blanks and fleshed out the story and continued it properly, you can't really tell a difference in the writing style, but I am weeping reading this book.
So they've done a good job closing it, I guess, right?
They did a great job closing it. And, for being only on book 2, I mean, there's giant chunks of stuff left out, because these are 700-800 page books each. Highly recommend it. If you start it, it's going to be at least a year of your life to get through.
Oh, there's so books. Many of them. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, on the cruise, we met a wonderful English lady named Gemma. She hung out with us at the hotel. She came with us when Caitlin didn't want to go to the wrestling show, and Facebook friends and all that. And the first thing I see on her Facebook feed is her in the airport. It's like having a drink and having a read before I get on my plane to Miami. And she is reading the first book in the Wheel of Time series. So I sat there. I'm like, I just saw your post from the airport. She's like, yeah. I'm like, you're reading Wheel of Time? It's the first time I've read it. I've been told to read the book before I start the show. I'm like, well, you're going to be several. You'll probably start the show on season 4 or 5 if you're trying to get through these. They do a great job. It's not, I wouldn't say the casting is completely on model, but because
it's interesting too, because the cast is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only like one really well-known actress, is like Rosamund Pike, and everyone else is kind of like an unknown actor.
I mean, and I'm blanking here, and I've closed the stupid tab. The guy that plays Lan is also fairly well known. Daniel Henney. He's fairly well known. He's not one of those guys that you're going to pull his name and go, oh, that guy, but you'll see him and go, that guy.
Yeah, like he's
Uh,
in Criminal Minds, so he's
yes,
done a lot of Criminal Minds
yes,
episodes and stuff.
yeah. He's one of those later stage replacements as they were cycling out. I think Shamar Moore. I think he came on after Shamar Moore left.
Here's an interesting bit of Wheel of Time and Robert Jordan trivia. Did you know that he was really good friends with George R. R. Martin?
Yes.
And a lot of his Game of Thrones, like the Game of Houses type thing, is influenced from Wheel of Time as well.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
because
he's
you see
drawn
that
on his works.
you start seeing that in season 2, because there's one city in particular. Carhane is very political games, very nice to your face, slit your throat when you're not looking. The way you develop the world, and they're
Well, you
doing
know.
it. They're doing a really good job of doing it justice. Some of these things are hard. I really like what they did with when they are using the source, when they are using the magic. They're lifting things out. They're rushing things here. They're pulling things back there. But I mean, Tom Maryland is not on model. He's younger, but it works. Like what they're doing they're not just adjusting one thing for the sake of adjusting it. When they do that, they're adjusting everything. So, I mean, when I say that some of the characters are off model, it's because it's the way they describe this particular people. I mean, you go geographically, people change. People in England don't look like people in Italy. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that
you
makes
do
sense.
that, but they're changing the aesthetics of the whole village when they do that. So it's like, yeah, no, they're okay. Yeah, we're a little off model, but we made everybody this way, so it makes sense. And it's really good. I'm really excited for the next season. It's one of those shows where I wish they would add a few more episodes just to flesh it out. But at the same time, I'm very cognizant that to do 14 seasons of this, it's not going to happen. I can think of one book in particular that'll probably end up being a half season. It's the biggest book with some of the coolest shit in it.
Yeah, I was
But I
just gonna
feel,
say they're probably gonna compile a couple books into one season just
yeah,
to try to get it to like a 6-7 season arc for the complete
yes,
story. Because that would kind of make sense. I guess
yeah,
the Wheel of Time is kind of like the lesser known fantasy series for the casual fantasy fan, like when you compare
yes.
it with like Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
um, or
Well,
even
when
The
you compare it
Witcher
to
right
Lord of the
now.
Rings,
Because
compare it to Game of Thrones as well.
yeah,
There are
yeah,
some theory, and I mean, I picked this up it was after I had read a Game of Thrones, and I was looking for something else. That it was between Game of Thrones and A Storm of Sword, Clash of Kings. It's
yeah.
between the first 2 George Martin books. I was looking for something else along the lines, and a buddy of mine's like, "Well, I mean, they're 5 or 6 books into it, but I mean, it's only 5 or 6 books. It's really good." So I picked one up, gave it a whirl, and I was hooked. I mean, I got through the first, 6 or 7 in paperback before, 8, and I picked it up and I just kept going. Like, there was a point where I was waiting a year in between these things, or a year and a half in between these things, and I was just like, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I still have all my hardcovers on the shelf, and I am determined to find the hardcovers for the beginning of the series that I only have in paperback. They're hard to find because nobody's given them up. And I don't
So
want to do that thing where it's like, oh, well, we're going to re-release it. No, I want the covers that match what I already have, that artwork design. So I highly recommend this. It's
I have to assume that the series is highly scrutinized too by like the passionate fans. So they have a monumental task to be able to nail it. Um, they're not going to get everything right, and people are going to complain about nuances of the book series because they're so
yes.
it's not like it's I don't know what was the first one released like 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
You
So
know what? I will look that up.
there's
You
been so
keep
much
all your points.
yeah there's been so much time where people have lived with the way they see this world in their minds as it going back to your meme. people
Mhm.
people are going to be like, wait a minute, that wasn't in the book, or that's not how it was in the book, but
Yeah.
it's fine. Like just allow the movie to be its own thing, and
Yeah. So this
don't
was
compare it too much to the book.
Eye of the World, the first one released. He did do a prequel in the early 2000s, but January 15th, 1990.
Okay.
So we were in
yeah.
the 7th grade when this one first dropped.
Yeah, it's 34 years ago.
Yeah.
Boy.
Let's not do math. Math makes me feel old.
Oh boy.
Well,
Yeah, I won't tell you that I did some the other day, and the DOB is 2005.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh boy. I was looking
Oh,
at it like, oh my God.
Mm. Yeah. So
Anyways,
I mean,
moving on.
yeah,
Wow.
I think to answer your question, my theory is that fans of the book series are going a little easier on the Prime series.
You think it's because it's been so long and they've been asking for this for like so many years
and
that they're
because
like okay with little
aware-
differences?
we're well aware that 14 seasons is unfeasible.
Yeah.
We are well aware that stuff is going to have to be pulled out and stuff is going to have to be adjusted. So, I mean, just like Walking Dead, not every death of that character is the same in the comic books as it is on screen. We're well aware of it and we just want the story. And so far, they've done a really good job of making those alterations. So nobody's really been upset that I've seen. And it's just like, we get it. I mean, you might get six seasons out of this, maybe 7, but we're not going to get 14. And especially in today's day and age, some of us ain't going to live to see the end of it, and we want to see how you get to certain points. So I think we're being, as a fandom, and I'm speaking for a large group of people, I think we're at a point where as long as they do it proper justice and they don't rush it and they do the best they can, we're willing to sit here for 6-7 seasons and let them condense. Just show us the
You
story.
just want to see it realized, yeah. Well, I
And
mean,
like I said, it's $14. Like, that's a long haul. I told Gemma, shout out, that I can't wait to see her on the next year's cruise to see how far in the series she's gotten. Yeah, I know that I reread the first 12 books 3 times. And then I just, because it's like, oh, this one, it's coming out. This one's coming out in February. Here's the release date for the next book. So I just start rereading it, and I realized, like, I got to start rereading the whole series the second I put the new one down. So I just
that
stopped.
makes sense. Yeah.
Anyways, we're clicking on an hour here, boys. We got a lot of meat on the bone. We might have to come back to this one.
Yes.
But we got some. The Academy Awards are coming up, so we got some discussion about that. As far as that goes, how many of the best pictures have you guys seen so far?
I've watched 3.
I've seen 0.
3.
I don't even know.
If there's any movie to watch, you watch Oppenheimer, because that's my.
I watched that last week. We will get into that next week on my opinion, because you did not like my opinion then in the text group, and I would disagree with that. I would say if you're going to watch any of them, watch Barbie.
Watch both, because that's kind of going to be the battle between people is between those
I think
two movies.
You know what, they're both spectacular for different reasons. It was a 1-2 punch in the theater, and I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch throughout time. When anybody mentions one, they're going to mention the other, because they're right in there with the Oscars as well.
They were released on the same day.
Yeah,
I believe they were in the theaters on the same day. That's unheard of, to have 2 Oscar Best Picture movies released on the same day. Like, I don't has that ever happened? Maybe, but
you know what? That's something to research next week, I think, or I believe it's next week when we start looking into nominations and stuff.
Yes.
So join us for that. We're going to get a couple weeks of Oscar nominations in. We'll be primarily focused on our big 4 categories of picture and actress, and
and then the week after we do focus solely on the Best Picture nominations.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. So we'll run through the categories and give our opinions about who we think we should win, or who we hope wins, or if there's any discrepancies. And then the week after, on the 9th, we'll exclusively talk about just the Best Picture. That's what we did last year. So we may change it, we may not. Yeah.
I don't know. I just show up. I show up, I hit buttons, and then we go through.
And then the mouth opens and we just talk. It's the way it works. So
and then I say, good afternoon.
How do?
Peace and love.
Bye.